Corruption costs Kenyans 250,000 jobs every year.
They say justice is black, but in Kenya, it's just blindfolded long enough to miss the evidence. It's a sophisticated game where public officials use their positions like personal ATMs. And the pattern of how corruption is handled in Kenya is painfully predictable, almost scripted. A sensational scandal erupts, public outrage flares, the EACC swings into action, the DPP announces charges, investigations are launched with much fanfare, followed by lengthy legal processes, but then nothing. The court process drags for years, evidence disappears, witnesses go silent, the suspects walk in and out of court like VIPs, post bail and return to their offices.
1.6 billion shillings of taxpayers' money was squandered at the National Youth Service.
Eventually, the DPP withdraws the charges for lack of sufficient evidence. Parliament blames the judiciary blames investigators, investigators say politicians interfered, and the cycle ends right here. No accountability, no jail time, no recovery money. Just promotions, campaign rallies, and sometimes cabinet appointments. But here's what's crazy. Every year, they release shiny reports with billions traced, assets recovered, and files forwarded to the DPP. And here's the catch. The EACC doesn't prosecute. They investigate and pass the bulk. The moment they forward the file to the DPP, their job is done, and the cover-up begins. The EACC knows this. That's why they investigate just enough to make the headlines, but not enough to cause real convictions.
The EACC does not prosecute. It recommends for prosecution. And you've seen in the recent past, they get people, they make recommendations, they commence cases, then they are withdrawn and terminated. What can the EACC do?
That have made it so difficult to match the rate of conviction with the number of files submitted to him by the EACC.
We shall not bow to any pressures whatsoever until we are satisfied that there is evidence for us to prosecute. Because I will not take a case that I know I will fail, and thereby fail the Kenyan people.
Despite dramatic raids and arrests by the EACC, DPP Haji sees gaps that make it difficult for the cases to end up in conviction.
It's unfortunate that this has to come out here, but the truth of the matter is that there were gaps, and there are gaps, and there's no two ways. And where there are, we will point out and return to the EACC to ask them to do further investigations and to bring the evidence required.
I am persuaded that you actually do not need EACC to successfully prosecute corruption in Kenya. These gaps are deliberate.
Take the Aurora and Kimwarel dam scandals. Over 63 billion Kenya shillings paid out for dams that were never built. Big press conferences, big names arrested, then silence. And just like that, in 2024, Rotich walks free. But why? The DPP says we couldn't find enough evidence. But here's the thing. Who lost the evidence? Who was responsible for building the case? It was them, the DPP. And that's the joke. The same people who are supposed to prosecute are protecting. It's not about fighting corruption. It's about looking like they're fighting corruption. It's not justice. It's choreography, a political dance to calm the masses until we forget. Time and time again, the pattern repeats. Public outrage, suspects arrested, years of court delays, charges withdrawn. Year after year, billions are looted, zero convictions, zero accountability, zero shame.
Aisha Jumwa, 19 million graft case withdrawn. Murder charge against Aisha Jumwa withdrawn. Case against former Kenya Power MD Ben Chumo, Ken Tarus and 10 others withdrawn. The charge of rape against Mithika Linturi withdrawn. Businesswoman Mary Wamboi had a 2.2 billion shilling tax case against her withdrawn. Another case in which she was charged with illegal possession of firearms and ammunition also withdrawn. Former NHIF boss Jeffrey Mwangi alongside 13 others also had graft charges against them withdrawn in a 1.1 billion shillings graft case. In November last year, the DPP made a decision to withdraw corruption charges against former Samburu Governor Moses Lenol Kulal, but he later had a change of heart and rescinded this decision, opting to allow the case to go on to its conclusion in the courts. But you see, it's not just withdrawal that is affecting the office of the DPP. You see, in December last year, the courts acquitted former Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko of corruption and money laundering charges during his time as governor. The court also released his co-accused, Anthony Otieno Ombok. The court cited, get this, a defective charge sheet, stating that the evidence did not meet the threshold needed to prosecute the accused. That's not all. Joe Sang, the Kenya Power Managing Director at the time, was acquitted of corruption charges related to the 1.9 billion shillings Kisumu oil jetty project. He was acquitted for lack of evidence. Also acquitted were Gloria Kafafa, Vincent Korir, Nicholas Gitobu, Billy Aseka, and Samuel Odoyo. Now, I have one last illustration before I make my point. Businessman Humphrey Kariuki had his tax evasion charges quashed by the High Court in May. All of these, ladies and gentlemen, point to something. Just what is going on at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions? What is driving all these withdrawals of cases against high-profile individuals? You see, in fact, the law does allow the DPP to withdraw cases. Article 157(8) of the Constitution gives power to the DPP to discontinue a prosecution, of course with the permission of the court. It provides that the DPP can, and I quote, discontinue at any stage before judgment is delivered any criminal proceedings instituted by his office, end quote. All right, well and good. But so what does it then say about the judgment of the holder of that office to institute proceedings, spend taxpayers' money through a judicial process, only to realize along the way that they do not have enough evidence to sustain the charge? Does that not point to a competence issue? By the way, incompetence is one of the grounds laid out in Article 158 for the removal of the DPP. Now, if indeed these cases either did not pass muster or were politically motivated, then imagine the damage done to the reputation of those accused. But here's one interesting fact. The withdrawal of those cases seemingly favors the high and mighty in this country. So what of the ordinary citizens like you and I? Is it possible that they also suffered the same fate? And if so, who will speak for them? You remember former Chief Justice David Maraga defending the judiciary when it was accused of dragging its feet in resolving cases? He turned the heat on the prosecution, citing instances where the charge sheets had too many counts, a long list of witnesses and lawyers representing parties, making it impossible for judicial officers to expedite the hearing and conclusion of such cases. Folks, there has clearly been quite a number of issues raised about how the office of the DPP has conducted itself. You see, whatever we are told as Kenyans, these are the facts as they stand. Every case that is being withdrawn today was first presented and even prosecuted by the very same DPP. And folks, we do not have any reports, images, or even videos of gun-to-head moments. So, we are owed a detailed explanation of these cases. What happened? Are these the only cases that were defective? How many other people are sitting in remand with defective charge sheets in court? Is the DPP able to make independent decisions about who to charge, or is he swayed by political pressure? Was there political pressure applied to charge certain individuals in the previous regime? Is there political pressure to drop them now? The drafters of the Constitution took their time to put in protections for this office to prevent all the back and forth we have seen from this office in the last few months. The mandate of the office holder is very clear.
They say there's a fight against corruption. But where's the battlefield? Kenya loses over 800 billion shillings every year to corruption. In 2023, only 2.9 billion was recovered. That's less than 0.5%, and yet they say the system is working. This isn't a fight. This is a theater. Welcome to the joke that is corruption in Kenya. Since Kenya's independence, corruption has been treated as a necessary evil. The pattern started way back in 1965 with the Ngei Maid scandal just a few years after independence. From there, it grew like weed, unchecked and quietly nurtured by those in power. In the 1970s, the Kenyatta family land grabs and import license rackets set the tone for impunity. The 1980s brought the infamous Goldenberg scandal under Moi's regime, where Kenya lost over 100 billion shillings to a fake gold scheme. And just when the public thought lessons had been learned, the Anglo-leasing scandal of the early 2000s under Kibaki showed that corruption had only evolved, now disguised in complex security and procurement deals. Under Uhuru Kenyatta, the NYS Scandal 1 and 2, Eurobond saga, and Aror and Kimoret dam scams revealed that corruption had become a system, involving cartels, senior civil servants, and politicians across the board. Today, in the era of bottom-up promises, nothing has changed. From KEMSA COVID-19 hates and the stalled Hustler Fund disbursement saga, the dance continues. Each regime has inherited not just the power, but a manual on how to plunder, carefully, publicly denied, but politically protected. Yet the shocking reality is that not a single high-profile corruption case has resulted in meaningful prosecution despite hundreds of billions of shillings stolen. Kenya doesn't lack anti-corruption tools. It lacks the political will to use them. Kenya has spent billions on anti-corruption campaigns over the decades. Despite the establishment of various policies and institutions aimed at curbing corruption, these measures have often fallen short, leaving corruption as a significant concern in the country. The government keeps promising to eradicate corruption at all levels.
Out of every 100 Kenya shillings KRA collects, they are spending 70 shillings on debt finance, illegal debt. In our laws, for you to borrow, you must get number one, Parliament approval. Okay? Parliament must approve it. Then number two, you only borrow for development. In the 10 years from 2013 to 2023, Kenya Parliament only approved borrowing of 2.2 trillion. Approved. Why is it 11 trillion? Where are these money that have been borrowed? Where are the projects worth 11 trillion in Kenya? 11 trillion, what it can do? We are saying this debt, the bulk of it is illegal. It's odious. Let those people who gave out the money go after the people they gave the money. I'll give you an example. Eurobond 1, $2 billion US dollars. 2 billion US dollars. 1 billion, when Raila was making noise in 2014, Treasury CS, then Henry Rotich, released a SWIFT document showing of 1 billion, part of it used to retire an old debt, part of it came to Central Bank of Kenya, Exchequer account, accounted for. Okay? It was true. They accounted for 1 billion US dollar. 1 billion, when more noise were made by Raila and team, and Rotich released the SWIFT, the money, they redacted where the money has gone. It went to somebody's private account in Qatar. Why should Kenyans people pay for it? Why? That is the new politics.
Billion
US dollars, 130 billion Kenya shillings.
To Kenya.
130 billion Kenya shillings. 130 billion Kenya shillings.
Korir. Wacha nikurudiusie hii uone. Unaona one bob. Unachanga mpaka ifike tao. Unachanga tao mpaka ifike tao 100. Unafanga tao 110 na kwa mita mo. Unapanga mita moja ngapi ifike 1 billion?
1,000.
1,000. Juu ikifika 100 hiyo tu ni 100 million. So unapiga 100 million times 10. Hiyo ni 1 billion. Sasa ili ifike
130 billion.
Wow. Kuna mtu alitumiwa 130 billion yetu.
Yes.
Kwa akaunti yake Qatar.
That is just one instance on Eurobond 1. Our debt today is 11 trillion. Our forensic audit even tells you for 10 years, in fact, as of 2024, Parliament approved debt of 2.2 trillion. We are told our debt that time was 10 trillion. Our repayment, what we have paid, 5.4 trillion. Money coming out of central bank to pay for debt. But yet you owe 11 trillion.
The corruption in this country is endemic. And unfortunately, in this country, I know governors now whose salaries are known, who within 2 years own helicopters, who within 2 years own mansions, who within 2 years have houses in Dubai. I know them. If you ask me, I would tell you it's this one, this one, this one, and we know them.
Kenya's fight against corruption has long been undetermined not just by inaction, but by government actions that paradoxically fuel the very vice they seek to eliminate. Time and time again, we've seen policies, laws, or crisis interventions introduced under the guise of reform, only to be twisted into tools for looting, impunity, or political manipulation. Take the 2007 amendment to the Anti-Corruption Act, for example. It was presented as a procedural update, but effectively shielded high-profile individuals from prosecution by barring investigations into crimes committed before 2003, just when Kenya was dealing with the fallout from major scandals like Goldenberg and Anglo-leasing. A move that looked bureaucratic on the surface turned into a mass pardon for grand theft. In 2023, Parliament debated the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Amendment E, a proposal that would decriminalize key procurement offenses, including the failure to follow procurement guidelines and the implementation of unplanned projects. Supporters called it a reform to reduce criminalization of administrative errors. But anti-corruption watchdogs like EACC and Transparency International warned that it would severely weaken accountability, giving corrupt public officers free rein to loot under the guise of errors. The trend is undeniable. Every few years, a new law or policy is passed not to fight corruption, but to sanitize it, to make it easier, safer, and more legal for those in power to access. Now in 2025, the trend continues with the controversial conflict of interest bill. On the surface, this new legislation claims to set boundaries between public officers and private interests, but beneath that, it's riddled with the loopholes. The bill has been criticized for allowing public officials to own companies that do business with government, as long as they disclose it. In other words, as long as you fill out a form, you can legally profit from public contracts. What should be a tool for accountability is being twisted into a license to loot, a formalization of tenderpreneurship. Instead of stopping conflict of interest, this bill is legalizing them under the illusion of transparency. The fight against corruption in Kenya is not just about exposing wrongdoing, it's about talking on a web of deeply entrenched systems that actively work to prevent justice from being served. While the government and agencies like Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Director of Public Prosecution, and the judiciary are meant to act as bulwarks against corruption, the truth is that they are systematically compromised and under constant pressure. The weakened institutions, the deep political capture, and the intimidation of witnesses, the inefficiencies of legal systems, and political interference all combined to make corruption a recurrent self-perpetuating problem. Until these core challenges are addressed, the fight against corruption will remain an uphill battle, with the victims being the ordinary citizens who are left to bear the brunt of the inequitable broken system. When billions disappear from public coffers, Kenyans suffer from inadequate schools, crumbling hospitals, and failing infrastructure. At this point, it is crucial to pause and really understand what corruption truly means. Corruption is the abuse of power or personal benefit when those in positions of authority use their power to exploit resources, bend the rules, or break laws, all while the people they are meant to serve are left to bear the consequences. Corruption manifests in numerous ways, each deeply harming societies and economies. Corruption isn't just confined to the government, it's everywhere in Kenya. It's in the streets, the boardrooms, the courts, and even in our everyday lives. Bribery fueling everything from police stops to school admissions. Embezzlement robs public funds that should be building the nation. Nepotism and cronyism hands out jobs and contracts to family and friends, blocking merit and fairness. Kickbacks fuel shady deals in government contracts, while fraud rots the system with fake reports and lies. Influence peddling lets the powerful manipulate decisions for personal gain, and favoritism gives privilege to the chosen few. Judicial corruption undermines the rule of law, and regulatory capture lets private interests hijack public institutions. And of course, political corruption distorts policies to serve politicians, not the people. A culture of transactionalism where favors and connections are valued over merit. We often point the finger at the government, the politicians, the system, but have we ever paused to look in the mirror? Corruption in Kenya isn't just the problem of politicians, it's part of who we are. We have contributed to this problem as a society. It is deeply intertwined with a complex web of societal attitudes that have fostered a climate of tolerance and, even disturbingly, a warped form of admiration for the corrupt. We call them mheshimiwa. We invite them to fundraisers, to church, to our weddings, and clap when they donate stolen money, as if they're doing us a favor. Mistaken for genuine philanthropy or development consciousness, we welcome them to social and religious events with open arms. But the tragedy is that we don't get angry. We get used to it. We feel sorry for the billionaire thief in court. We forget the nurse working without gloves, the schools with no books, the roads filled with potholes. This societal ambivalence has created an environment where corruption is often shrouded in euphemism, its true nature deliberately obscured.
Our problem is us. We are part of the problem until the day as a people and as a nation we decide to deal with the corrupt and we don't admire the corrupt. So, and who do we elect? When we go to church, how do the churches, when we see thieves entering church, even some pastors abandon their sermon to go and bring them to the front seats. Until the day that the social, societal intolerance for people who engage in such nefarious behavior is one of shaming them, then we will talk about and against corruption, we'll form body after body, we'll do commission after commission, and nothing will happen. So we have a problem, and that problem can only be solved by us because the voices of reason are not heard. We have seen individuals with questionable credentials, and we celebrate them, and we elect them into positions of power and authority. You've seen individuals with immoral wealth saying they are born again. I don't know born by what spirit, Roho Mtakatifu au Mtakatifu.
We hesitate to call a thief when the scale of the crime is monumental, as if the sheer volume of the stolen wealth somehow absolves the perpetrator of moral culpability. And then there's the ethnic card. When a corrupt leader is from our community, we defend them, not because they are innocent, but because they are ours. Justice becomes tribal, and corruption becomes protected, not
I
punished.
remember when I was at the anti-corruption one day, one of the thieves whom we had said should be arrested came to the Kenya anti-corruption officers at Integrity Center, and young people were singing, ni mwizi wetu, ni mwizi lakini ni mwizi wetu, ni mwizi lakini ni mwizi wetu. He's a thief, but he's our thief. So, the decision is yours, but we can change it. Then you think that the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission or the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is going to stop you from stealing? No, it is you who must make the decision that you are not going to engage in criminality. And as a society, we must choose to punish individuals who engage in criminality. Remember that none of us has a solution to our national problem. It is combined that we can have a solution. But one thing that I'm passionate about is that we must be Kenyan citizens. Our country is lonely. It is lonely because tribalists are the ones who are at the helm. They congregate from hotel to hotel. And when they go to such meetings, they bring their tribes. as mortgage in the political, as collateral in the political mortgage market. So they go there and say, I'm from this tribe. This is the collateral that I bring to the political mortgage market. And we have a basket of votes which come 2027 is going to catapult us.
The issue of attitude features strongly in our idea about the government. We seem to believe that the government is something alien or institution that grows money on trees, and that whoever steals from the government has not stolen from us, because government money isn't somebody's money. In fact, such a person is seen as a hero who has conquered some enemy.
Some MPs questioned the source of huge Harambee donations by some public officers.
The truth is that the government has no money of its own. It's only our taxes. For every money stolen from the government will most likely raise more taxes or cut down on services provided to us. This is how we lose the war before it even starts, because we are fighting the wrong battle. We are waiting for the government to fix corruption, but we are the ones who've made it a culture. Until we as a society dismantle the ingrained attitudes, recognize our complicity in perpetuating this cycle, and cultivate an unwavering intolerance for all forms of corruption, the efforts of any government will remain a Sisyphean task. The fight against corruption must be first waged within the hearts and minds of every Kenyan.
The fact is, too often, here in Kenya, as is true in other places, corruption is tolerated because that's how things have always been done. People just think that that is sort of the normal state of affairs. And there was a time in the United States where that was true too. My hometown of Chicago was infamous for Al Capone and you know, the mob and the organized crime corrupting law enforcement. But what happened was that over time people got fed up, and leaders stood up and they said, we're not going to play that game anymore. And you changed the culture and you changed habits. Here in Kenya, it's time to change habits and decisively break that cycle, because corruption holds back every aspect of economic and civil life. It's an anchor that weighs you down and prevents you from achieving what you could.
In Kenya, there's a special kind of entrepreneurship, the kind who wins tenders, delivers nothing, and walks away with billions. It usually starts with a government tender, a project like a road, a school, or even a hospital supply contract. A tender is announced, but the outcome is already decided. Well-connected companies, often owned by relatives or proxies of powerful individuals, are handpicked before the process even begins. Their paperwork is perfect, their prices inflated beyond imagination. To secure the deal, the company quietly pays kickback, a bribe that is often factored into the budget. That means that taxpayers end up paying not just for the project, but also for the bribe. Once the contract is awarded, the looting begins. Either the project is done halfway, done poorly, or not done at all, but the money is gone, cleared, disbursed, and even distributed up in the chain of command. Their entire business model is to win government tenders, inflate costs, deliver substandard services or nothing at all, and then vanish with the taxpayers' money. It's not just theft, it's theft disguised as development, and it's bleeding this country dry. Every year, billions of shillings are allocated for roads, schools, hospitals, and essential supplies. But instead of going directly into the work, this money flows through briefcase companies, shell entities set up overnight by well-connected elites. These companies have no equipment, no staff, no track record, just access to power. They're awarded tenders at triple the actual cost, then subcontract the work at half the price, or pardon or abandon it altogether. Former Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Ndung'u Waititu, his wife Susan Wangari Ndung'u, and 5 others were convicted in a 588 million road tender corruption case. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission investigated the case, revealing that companies linked to the governor and his wife were awarded inflated road construction contracts without proper procedures. This case exemplifies how political influence can be used to manipulate public procurement or personal gain. In December of 2023, former Tourism Minister Najib Balala and 2 others were charged in economic crimes related to the construction of the Ronan Ngala Utalii College. The project's cost was inflated from $12.5 million to $66.7 million, with significant portions paid to consultancy firms and contractors without delivering commensurate value. In July of 2024, Pamela Mutua, former managing director of KNTC, was charged with abuse of office over a 16 billion edible oil import scheme. The procurement process allegedly violated laws by awarding contracts to well-connected importers without proper tendering, resulting in substandard products and inflated prices. This incident underscores how tenderpreneurship can infiltrate essential commodity supply chains, affecting millions of Kenyans. In January of 2025, 4 individuals were convicted in a procurement scandal at the Kenya Pipeline Company involving approximately 550 million Kenya shillings. The accused were found guilty of irregular procurement processes leading to significant losses. The root of the problem is that the Kenyan government has become dependent on outsourcing. It relies entirely on contracts even for things that it will be able to do in-house. Whether it's road construction, ICT system, supply of medical kits, or even building classrooms, the state has no muscle of its own. That vacuum capacity is what tenderpreneurs exploit. If we are serious about fighting corruption, we must stop feeding this monster. We must start building a government that delivers by itself. Auditors may flag the irregularities, but the culprit's protected. Investigators show up, but only after media pressure. The file gets forwarded to the DPP, who sits on it, or worse, takes it to court, knowing that the evidence is too weak to stick. After years of court drama, the charges are dropped. The same faces reappear in new scandals, richer and bolder. This is not incompetence. It is intentional, and it plays out across counties, ministries, and parastatals. From bursary funds meant for poor students to billion-shilling infrastructure projects, corruption is not the exception, it's the business model. We need to invest in internal government capacity. Ministries and agencies must be equipped with their own procurement teams, construction units, IT developers, and engineers. Instead of outsourcing everything, the government should do what capable states do, that is to deliver key services directly. We need a digitalized, transparent procurement systems. We must shut the door on ghost companies and demand for a verifiable track record for any bidder. And every official or firm found guilty of fraud must be permanently blacklisted and prosecuted, not protected or recycled. Because here's the truth: tenderpreneurship is not development, it is theft in a suit. And until we build a government strong enough to stand on its 2 feet, one that does not rely on shady middlemen to deliver basic services, we will keep losing billions. Not to innovation, not to growth, but to thieves who mastered the art of looting legally.
Understand of the roads that were planned, because they are numbered and there are details as to what these roads are, where they go, they start from where they go to. Then there's a little detail of roads that, given the time that they were planned for, those that have been completed vis-a-vis those who are not completed, 1, 2. Those that were paid for, and there's evidence of the money that was actually spent being evidenced on the road itself, meaning you can look at the road and say, this one is commensurate with what this person was paid.
Yes, we have roads that were budgeted for, launched, but never started. But we also have roads that were budgeted for, launched, they started, but were never finished. Then we have roads that were budgeted for, launched, they were done, but very poor quality.
In any serious fight against corruption, there's one group of people who matter the most: the whistleblowers. They're the ones who see the rot from the inside. They take the risk, they raise the alarm, and in a just society, they will be heroes. But in Kenya, whistleblowers don't get medals. They get threats, exile, demotion, or death. Remember the Goldenberg scandal under President Moi? That single scheme cost Kenya about 10% of the country's entire GDP. That's like someone stealing a tenth of everything your country produces in a year and walking away without consequences. David Munyakei, a clerk at the Central Bank of Kenya, was the first major whistleblower in Kenya's history. He exposed the Goldenberg scandal in the early 1990s. A scheme where the government fraudulently subsidized gold exports, costing the country billions of shillings. Despite his courageous act, Munyakei was fired, arrested, and lived a difficult life until his death in 2006. He is often remembered as a tragic figure who paid a heavy price for corruption. In 2005, John Githongu, the then permanent Secretary for Governance and Ethics under President Mwai Kibaki, exposed the Anglo-leasing scam involving over 55 billion shillings. John Gitongo did everything right. He followed the evidence, he named the suspects, he exposed the scam, and what did he get in return? He was forced into exile, branded a traitor, abandoned by the very government that claimed to fight corruption. And yet because of him, the country saw the full scale of high-level looting, a scandal that reached the heart of State House, but no one was jailed. Gitongo had to flee for his life. Another sad story is that of CPS Spencer Sankale of the Masai Mara University scandal, the Mara Heist. Sankale was a finance officer at Masai Mara University who in 2019 exposed a massive corruption scandal involving misappropriation of hundreds of millions of shillings. The consequences for Sankale were severe. He was dismissed from his job in 2021. He faced significant unemployment for nearly 2 years before finding another position. And as if that was not enough, adding insult to the injury, one of the main suspects in the heist was reportedly awarded millions in compensation for wrongful dismissal. While Sankale's case challenging his own dismissal faced delays, he was also reportedly slammed with a multi-million shilling defamation suit by one of the accused. Another case is that of Jennifer Wambua, who was the Deputy Director of Communications at the National Lands Commission and a key state witness in a 122 million fraud case. Tragically, in March of 2021, she was found murdered in a case that remains unsolved. While a direct link to her whistleblowing activities hasn't been definitively established in court, the timing and her involvement in a high-profile corruption case raised strong suspicion that her willingness to testify may have been a motive. Even more recently, Nelson Amenya of the JKIA deal exposed alleged secret negotiations between the Kenyan government and the Adani Group, an Indian conglomerate, regarding a multi-million-dollar deal to lease and manage JKIA. This revelation sparked public outrage and a parliamentary investigation. While celebrated by some as a hero, Amenya reportedly feared for his life and sought protection in France where he was studying, citing threats and legal challenges, including a gag order. This case highlights how even in instances where a whistleblower is lauded publicly, the personal risks remain significant. In a more recent example from 2023, a whistleblower who exposed alleged fraudulent activities targeting elderly patients under the National Hospital Insurance Fund reportedly received death threats after the expose was aired by local media outlets. This case, where the whistleblower's identity was not publicly disclosed, underscores the extreme danger faced by individuals who reveal corruption, often leading to them operating in fear and anonymity. Lastly, in 2024, an African uncensored documentary exposed a scandal where unethical businessmen allegedly supplied sand disguised as fertilizers to farmers under a government subsidy program. This expose was triggered by an anonymous whistleblower working at the diatomite plant involved. The whistleblower's anonymity highlights the significant fear of reprisal that deters many from coming forward. The documentary itself underscores the potential dangers faced by those who expose powerful interests. Corruption is no longer just a crime committed in the shadows. It's a system. It's a system embedded into the institutions of power themselves. From police stations to parliament, from county offices, the anti-corruption agencies to national courts. Corruption is no longer just something that happens, it's how things happen. There is every indication that the thieves do not sleep as they look for ways to steal. They steal with one hand and use the other hand to hire crooked lawyers, bribe investigators, buy judges, and infiltrate every part of the justice chain. We are witnessing very clear cases of collusion in our courts, a trend where suspects rush to court to stop the DCI and the DPP from arresting and charging them with corruption, and the courts are granting such suspects their wishes. When we allow suspects of corruption to be admitted to bail and return to the very offices they allegedly looted from, then return to court a year later, that's an invitation to tamper with the case. The first thing they do is clean up, delete files, forge papers, pressure subordinates, and erase the trail. If Kenya is serious about fighting corruption, we must stop allowing suspects to return to positions of influence during active investigations. We must prioritize securing evidence, protecting whistleblowers, and ensuring that the accused have no access to the systems they are being investigated for corrupting. Finally, the agonizing slow pace at which corruption cases progress through our judicial system serves as a de facto form of impunity. In Kenya, corruption cases don't take months, they take decades if they ever end. Delays become the defense, the public forgets, witnesses die, files vanish, and the accused become cleared, not because they are innocent, but because we waited long enough for the cartridge to die down. Societies that have successfully stemmed the tide against corruption have understood the critical importance of swift and severe consequences. Such societies understand that the corrupt who go unpunished or who take long to be punished morph into figures of perverse admiration, further eroding societal values and weakening the very foundations of the state. Corruption isn't unbeatable. Other countries have faced it head-on and won. The difference is our political will, institutional independence, and real consequences. Rwanda stands out as a strong African example. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Rwanda was crippled by corruption. Today, it's one of the cleanest governments in Africa. How did they achieve this? Swift punishment, zero political protection, and ruthless intolerance for impunity. Public servants were regularly audited. No one was too powerful to fall. Institutions are empowered, and most importantly, they are respected and feared.
Tolerating corruption is a choice, not an inevitability.
To Rwanda now, if you want a passport, you'll get it. You don't pay a dime. You go to Rwanda, drive on the streets, you'll not pay a dime. You go to Rwanda, and I've done it, you can cause a company to be incorporated within 1 hour. It can be done. And we know that there are places where things can be cleaned up. It is just a question of sustained political action, and you re-educate the people and make corruption expensive and painful. Then it can be done.
In Singapore, the transformation came through a strong anti-corruption body with full prosecutorial powers, direct accountability to the executive, and competitive salaries for public servants to reduce temptation to steal. Corruption became too risky to attempt.
Hello, I'm Mr. Chua from Corrupt Practices. We specialize in accounting, cleaning, and copy services. Trust me, I want to help you. Turn your $10 into $1,000. Nothing is too dirty for us to clean. Special copy, extra sweet. Call now. John, when copy? Mr. Chua, you're involved in corrupt practices. Sir, cannot be lah. Sir, copy.
In Botswana, transparent governance, effective checks and balances, and a culture of personal responsibility in leadership earned the country one of the best anti-corruption regulations on the continent. What is their difference with Kenya? Their institutions are independent and immune from political interference. Kenya does not need more talk. It needs action. Here's what must happen immediately. 1. Give the EACC full prosecutorial powers. No more passing files to die at the DPP's desk. 2. Fund and protect our anti-corruption bodies. Give them the teeth and the independence to bite. 3. Deny corruption suspects access to their offices during investigations. No more tampering with evidence. 4. Fast-track corruption trials. Time is justice. Delay is sabotage. 5. Blacklist corrupt companies and officials permanently. No second chances for looters. 6. Pass and enforce real whistleblower protection laws. Truth tellers must be shielded, not punished. 7. Vote wisely. Stop recycling thieves into power. Their money is your stolen future. 8. Reject bribes. Expose the corrupt. Change the culture. Corruption lives because we allow it. 9. Make corruption too expensive to attempt. Through laws, through punishment, through public shame.